Thank you for joining us tonight. We are real. Oh, okay. We're very thankful tonight that we have some great experts to share some important information with all of the devastation that's happened up north. We felt it was really important to help get safety information out. There's a lot of concern around homeowners insurance and all of that. So we have people from the fire department here, and we have our insurance specialist who's going to chat with us. She called, she didn't want to get anybody sick, she came down with the flu, so she's actually joining us live on Zoom, and so she's going to do it that way. So she was actually going to drive, and we're like, no, don't do that. So we appreciate her going through this, and she's got some great information to share. So her name is Kimberly Terrell. So Kimberly, can you hear us? Okay, go ahead.
Can you hear me good?
Yeah. There we go. Is there another button? Computer.
Yes. Sorry about that, Charity.
It's okay.
You guys hear me better?
This one's on? Yeah, it's on.
Okay, how about now?
Yeah, try it. Is anybody on Zoom on the phone? My computer's on mute.
Can you hear us? Okay.
Let me. We know.
I'll keep talking, so you're getting a gauge of what you're doing is working or not.
I think we're good.
Okay,
Just talk real loud, Kimberly.
you got it. I have a loud voice, so you guys are in lag. Did everybody get a copy of the insurance coverages, what you need to know handout?
Not yet.
So there's a one-pager that I put together. It is very basic because I didn't get this company branded. We put it together last minute just for this event. So if you don't have it, raise your hand and Raina can kind of have that out because it's going to be everything I'm covering. So I think in light of the fires, what really came out was people had a lot of questions about insurance they didn't know that they had. There were a lot of videos circulating of people talking about not having fire coverage, not enough fire coverage, and so what we experienced in our agency was an uptick of calls of people wanting to know more about their insurance policies. We have always offered reviews, but we rarely have people take advantage of them. And so what we've noticed is we had to actually slow down the invites for reviews because so many people want to go over their insurance policy. So a kudos to the first team office. They put this together. I think it's a really, really good workshop. It's just going to give you a rundown of the discussion you should be having with your insurance company. Are you guys good, Terry? You can hear me good?
Yep.
Awesome. So you guys, on that worksheet, I have 5 things you should be discussing with your insurance professional or company. So the first one is just confirming you have fire coverage. That was the #1 question we got right after the fires, is people calling to say, I just want to make sure I have fire coverage. In the past, like 99% of people would automatically have fire coverage. However, what's happened in the last 5 to 8 years is a lot of people have had to go with the California Fair Plan. So what happens is you take out a difference in conditions policy, which is a standard homeowners insurance policy that does not cover fire damage. And then you would piggyback with a policy through the California Fair Plan that specifically covers fire. So people are asking, our biggest thing is a lot of people, when they're purchasing a home, the mortgage company will pay for one of the policies, and the buyer is responsible, let's say for the California Fair Plan policy, and then they forget about it and sometimes let it lapse. So it is a very, very important conversation you should be having with your company, just to confirm that your current policy does cover fire damage. In addition, if you currently have a California Fair Plan policy, you do need a piggyback policy. That California Fair Plan policy only covers fire damage. It doesn't cover any type of water damage, and it doesn't cover any type of liability. So people sometimes would have taken these out because it used to be a cheap policy. So that is the first question you should be talking to your insurance professional about, is just making sure you have fire coverage. So the second thing is dwelling coverage. This got brought up a lot during the fires because you saw a lot of videos. I saw a ton of videos of people saying, I'm not sure if I have enough coverage. Or there were people that took out a California Fair Plan policy, and you can only get up to $3 million in coverage on a California Fair Plan policy. So there are a lot of people in the Palisades that unfortunately were underinsured on this. So if you've done renovations, if you bought your house, let's say 5 years ago, you've done some major renovations, more than likely your homeowner's insurance policy could be underinsured. Your house could be underinsured because you haven't notified the company and they don't have the appropriate grade of cabinets in your house, right? And so it is always important that anytime you do any renovations on your property, that you're notifying your insurance company just to see if anything should be adjusted. So going over your dwelling coverage, that doesn't include the cost of land. So your dwelling coverage is only gonna be what it would cost to rebuild your house. So as an insurance agent, I put all of that information into a valuation system, and it pulls up engineering fees, permitting fees, construction fees, what type of flooring the house has. And then from there, it will populate what it would cost to rebuild that house. So definitely something is going over all of the specs. In addition to renovations, we also had an all-time high for inflation. The cost of plywood went up, the cost of labor went up to rebuild. So we're running into, on our end, the insurance policy hasn't caught up enough. And we are running into people underinsured on their dwelling. And typically not a significant amount, but it is something you should be having a discussion with your agent about at some point. And you guys, I'm gonna go through these, and then I am gonna open it up for questions. So if you do have a question, just write it down. That way I can make sure I'm addressing some of the things you might have come here to discuss. Personal property is a big one. It gets overlooked, especially on the California Fair Plan. Because the California Fair Plan premiums can be high, a lot of people will cut back on personal property coverage. So personal property is any personal belongings. If you took the roof off of your house and tipped it upside down, everything that falls out, right? It's your appliances, anything that's not permanently attached to your home. So something to know on your personal property is there are special limits for high ticket theft items. That's gonna be jewelry, furs, musical equipment, fine arts, goldware and silverware, collectibles, cash, and I think I got all of that, firearms and fine art and musical equipment. So you do have the option to take out a separate policy called a personal articles policy. And this basically covers those items. You can add that coverage to your homeowner's insurance policy. We're recommending all of our clients do a separate policy because if you ever have to file a claim, that claim will fall to the home. If you have a separate personal articles policy, it isn't gonna impact your homeowner's insurance premium. And those personal article policies that are done through private carriers tend to be cheaper. So one that goes overlooked on a policy, it is something you can move up and down, typically on a policy in terms of lowering or increasing coverage. It's something we see a lot of people lowering on a California Fair Plan. So if you have loss at your house, let's take the Palisades fire for example, and you cannot live in your home, loss of use covers any additional living expenses you would incur. So that can be rent somewhere else. It can be utilities at a second location. It can be gas if you're driving further, food if you have to eat out for 2 weeks. So anything above and beyond, most policies only cover up to 12 months. For the Palisades fire, they actually extended it 24 months because it is a disaster or a catastrophe. And it's 100% going to take longer than 12 months to rebuild up there. So the issue with the Palisades could be a lot of those people might not have enough loss of use coverage to go for the full 24 months. So this is definitely one of those policies we're always going over just to see what somebody could rent their house out for or what rent goes for in those areas. Heaven forbid you have to live elsewhere due to damage to your home. And then the last coverage is building and ordinance. So this is definitely something that gets overlooked a lot on a policy. This basically, we'll use the Palisades fire for an example again, because I think we're gonna see a lot of stuff come up with building and ordinance in the Palisades fire. So this covers any upgrades that need to be made to the home. So your house burns down and now the city is requiring certain types of roofs in that area, certain types of stucco, special vents for the house. That isn't typically covered under your dwelling coverage. It would be under the building and ordinance coverage. So it is something separate, and that starts at 10% of your dwelling coverage. So you typically have the option to up it 25% or 50% on your policy. So if you guys hear in your areas and you're concerned about new city ordinances because you might be in a fire zone and you're hearing talks of that, that would be a good time to review your policy and see if you need to up your building and ordinance coverage. So I do have a few tips for you guys, and then I'm gonna open it up for Q&As. I typically don't do Q&As, but people have a ton of questions. So I wanna make sure I'm answering everybody's questions tonight. So the first is, you're already hearing that insurance companies will be taking on rate increases in 2024, later in 2024 and 2025. So just be aware of that. The California Fair Plan has roughly about $3 billion of coverage for the fires up in Palisades and Eden. They're guesstimating that the losses up there are gonna sit around at the minimum $6 billion. So the California Fair Plan is a pot of companies that all share the risk and the loss. So what happens is when there is not enough money to cover the losses, those losses get dispersed among all of the insurance companies in California, basically from the top carriers down to the bottom. So I think we've already heard that State Farm is looking at an emergency 22% rate increase. Sage Sure put something out saying they're looking at up to a 40% rate increase. So it is extremely important that if your mortgage company pays for your insurance policy, you guys are opening all of that mail, because most of the time people are finding out about their rate increases when their mortgage payment goes up. You have the option to find out before then, but we get a lot of people, and I get it, the insurance companies send out entirely way too much mail. So a lot of people don't open it. Now is the time to start looking. And in addition to that, a lot of carriers are asking for additional underwriting information. So you might not be getting non-renewed. It might not even be a bill, but in order to renew your policy, they want extra information from you. If you don't fill that out, your policy would go up for non-renewal. So right now is a time to be opening everything you get from your insurance company, just to make sure it's not a questionnaire, just to make sure it's not a non-renewal, and just to make sure if there are any significant rate increases on your policy, you are aware of that before your mortgage company pays that bill on your behalf. And then my last tip of the night is, if you have a trust, if you have your home listed in a trust, a lot of people do this after they purchase the home, so it's kind of an after fact. You do need to make sure that you have your trust listed as an additional insured on your homeowner's insurance policy. The only time we're really seeing issues with coverage on this is if the trust has a different name than the names that are on the insurance policy. So to be safe, it's a really, really quick fix. Like you just call your insurance company and say, hey, I need to list my trust as an additional insured. And we add it on, you get a new copy of your policy and you're good to go. If the names look different than the people that are residing in the house, like if a mom and dad have purchased a policy or have put a trust, the home in a trust, and kids are living in the home, that should be technically a landlord policy. So it is a good opportunity if your home is in a trust to make sure that the property is insured correctly. So I know I jammed through that. I did want to give you guys the opportunity to ask questions. So I am gonna open it up at this point and then hope I can hear everybody.
Hey Kimberly, sorry, we're gonna ask that we hold questions till we actually have Adrian speak too,
Okay.
so we can get them all together at the end. Did you talk about the declaration page yet? And all of the.
Oh, you know what? Right now, will you pull up that slide with the coverages? So you guys, this is gonna be a standard deck page. If you're gonna be doing a review with your insurance agent, I would highly, when we're doing these with our clients, we send them a copy of this. That way we can go line by line with them. We can figure out the cost per square foot of the dwelling, right? We're going over the specs. So we're going over coverage A, which is the dwelling. We're going over their personal property to make sure it's enough. We're making sure their liability is sufficient. They don't have any concerns that they need additional liability. We're going over if there are separate structures on the property. We're going over the loss of use and then the building and ordinance coverage. So this is what you want to get when you go to do that, so you guys can look at it and you can physically see what your policy has while you're doing the review with your agent.
And yeah, so they don't have that copy yet. They're gonna print those out and hand them out, but that has all of the limits on there. And so can you, again, just make sure that they are clear about what to do with their agent about the different areas and all of that, right?
Yes, you just want to make sure, and obviously you guys, this is my personal deck page, so it's going to be totally different. We just wanted to provide you an example of what it looks like and what you should be getting before you do that review. I'm a very visual person, so if somebody is going over something and I don't have it in front of me, it's like in one ear and out the other. So we like to make sure all of our have that, just to make sure they understand that each of those coverages are on there.
Okay.
And then I have a deck page of the California Fair Plan, you guys, so you can kind of see what that looks like on the next slide.
And again, they can't see, this is way too small on the screen here.
It's small on there. So unfortunately, you guys,
But we'll print these out for you guys so you have a sample.
perfect. And then it's just that you're gonna request just a declarations page. You only need this front page. It just has all of your coverages on it. And then the last two slides I included. A lot of companies right now, if you live in a wildfire area or a high-risk brush area, farmers is not necessarily non-renewing people, but they are asking them to get a wildfire prepared evaluation. And I know the next speaker is gonna kind of go over ways you can fireproof your home. But if you guys wanna write this down, it's wildfireprepared.org. If you are in a high-risk brush area and you're a farmer's client, they are sending questionnaires out and asking people to do these evaluations to make sure that there is a 5-foot space clearance around the house. And the list goes on, but they actually have a whole worksheet on that website that lets you know everything that needs to be done to keep your policy insured with farmers without having to go through the California Fair Plan. And that is it for me.
Wonderful. All right, thank you, Kimberly. Okay, so again, we'll go through Q&A, so she's gonna remain online with us. Right now, I would like to ask our very own, an agent in the house here, Rob Ward, who was a firefighter, a retired firefighter with Riverside for 30 years. to come up, and he's gonna also share a little bit and then help introduce our guest speaker from the Anaheim Fire Department. So Rob, come on down.
Hi everyone. I was with the City of Riverside for 30 years, and then after I retired in 2017, I came on to first team real estate. I've enjoyed it a lot. Real estate's definitely different than the fire department, but I have a lot of good experience at the fire department. I did first 10 years as a firefighter, then 10 years as an engineer. That's the person that pumps and drives. Then I did 10 years as a captain. So, and just so you guys know right away, with Anaheim Fire Department, you guys have a great fire department here. You really do. Like, if you see them, you'll see them on fire watches when it's red flag warnings. They do a great job here. So when Adrian speaks, I think you'll really see that he has a lot of great experience. He's with the mitigation department, the wildland mitigation department. So he'll go over a lot of things, and we'll have some questions. You guys can ask us questions afterwards. But he's really going to go over kind of hardening your house, or just making sure that what you need to do if a fire comes through, and he'll explain how the embers are one of the most dangerous things that come through, and they can go so far and catch things on fire. So Adrian Abel is right here. He'll go ahead and talk to you quite a bit more about it, and then afterwards you guys can ask us both questions. And right? All right.
All right. Good evening, everybody. My name is Adrian Abel, and I work for the City of Anaheim Fire and Rescue. I've been in the fire service about 20 years now. I am the department's wildfire mitigation specialist. My specific position was created about 2 years ago. Due to the needs of the department, we have a robust wildfire response system out here in the hills that complements the rest of our firefighting apparatus and equipment. But out here, specifically in the hills, we have to deal with that wildfire threat. And then on our fire prevention side, fire mitigation and all that was sort of an ancillary duty amongst the inspectors. So it's like, who's doing wildland this year, whatnot, okay. We kind of rotated that duty. Well, after the Canyon 2 fire, I think it was decided by the chief and council that we needed to have someone out here advocating for enforcement, education, and preparedness in wildfire mitigation full-time, all year round. It's not a seasonal thing anymore, as you can see, and so we needed someone to be a bit more dedicated to that. So I was chosen with that, given my background in wildfire firefighting. I'm not going to bore you with all my history in quals, but I also concurrently, I'm a crew and engine boss on a wildland crew up in Calabasas as well. So if I don't have enough things to do, even my girlfriend gets on me for that. But with that said, I've seen a lot of stuff out there on the operations side and the fire prevention side. I've been a fire investigator for 13 years as well. So I've investigated fires, I understand the fire behavior, and I've seen how houses burn, but especially in the wildfire setting, why houses are burning. So just so you know, obviously what's come to light here with the Eaton and Palisades fire, these are very unprecedented fires. It's not that we haven't seen something like this before, but these two fires were actually probably a couple of years in the making. And why do I say that? Well, because as you know, the last couple of years, or the last two seasons, we've had an unprecedented amount of rain, right? And so with that rain, most of these hills have been green longer than usual for the last 2 seasons. So with that said, during this time of year, things were still green in these hills. And so none of that, and that then created about 3 to 4 times the fuel loading in these hills than normal. And so, these hills no longer have large animals or anything to eat some of this stuff. And so, and usually these hills are not burning are supposed to be burning every year. Usually the chaparral systems, and that's what you kind of live in, is burns every 80 to 120 years. Now, what does that mean? Well, everywhere in the state, it's always burning. up north, it doesn't burn enough, right? But down here, it doesn't, it's not only meant to burn in these certain cycles. The problem is now that you introduce homes and infrastructure into these areas, then our fires become a little bit more frequent. With that said, on top of that, we had these 2 years of unprecedented rain. We had a lot of growth out there, and that's just here, that's everywhere in the Southern California region. And so with that said, you have an abundance of fuel, and now we had what did we have this summer? A very hot summer. So the good thing during the summer was, since these fuels were very green for so long, they had been able to accumulate a lot of moisture. And so despite it being very hot this summer, the fuels were able to get down to their critical levels late in the season. But by the end of the season, you know, there's always this game of whether the fuels get to critical levels, and when we talk about fuels, and I'm not going to bore you with all the science here, what I mean about fuels, we're talking about the live fuels. There are dead fuels that are susceptible to the sun's rays and drying out, and then there's the live fuels, the live plants. Now, when they reach 60% fuel moisture, that's when you start getting in trouble, right? So they were able to survive this very hot summer, but now, what did we start seeing? We started seeing the La Nina effect, and we knew that we wouldn't get a lot of rain this winter. So they had the long hot summer to dry out, and now they've had a very dry fall and winter months with very little rain for the whole year. So we knew that things would start brewing in these hills. So everyone was sort of kind of nervous about what could transpire. If it just went back into the rain, we would have made it out of it. But it doesn't look like it was going to do that. So that's why I said it's sort of a couple of years in the making here. So, and what I'm here to do, and usually I have I do have a PowerPoint, but I do have another PowerPoint presentation, but I'll get into this in a little more depth. I also want you to understand a couple other little myths here, that the number of fires in the state, or however devastating some of these fires may be, how big a fire is, and how many homes are destroyed do not correlate. So some years we may burn millions of acres, or hundreds of thousands of acres, I should say, in the state, and we may have very little damage. In other years, we have quite billions of dollars worth of damage, as you can see from just the Eden and the Palisades fire, but not a very high fire year. So it means that we didn't have a lot of acres burned this year. But obviously, you know, but the Palisades and Eden, they're probably going to get into the record books as far as how much dollar loss occurred in there. So the amount of acreage and the dollar loss do not necessarily always correlate with each other. So with that said, I want to also dispel a couple of myths out there and everything. What I do most of the time is I enforce a lot of the defensible space around your house, and the clearing of vegetation, and advising people on how to harden their home. So when we talk about defensible space, we're talking about that clearance right around your house of vegetation. We start with what they call now the new zone. It used to be 5 feet now, but now it's called a zone 0. The zone 0, from 0 to 5 feet, is kind of where what we're seeing is where homes are being lost. We're not losing homes to vegetation that's just burning up against the house, and the house burns down, as is evident in the Palisades, but it's even more evident in the Eden fire and portions of Malibu. And when we clear that vegetation around that house, especially that 0 to 5 foot zone, that is what is proven to be some of the most crucial parts of the house. and home hardening, but we'll get into that. And then you go on to the 5 to 30 feet, and then the 30 to 100 feet. And some of you will have this Ready, Set, Go brochure, which will talk about some of the, and the 0 to 5 is kind of a new thing that's kind of been implemented now. And the reason why I want to bring that up, that is what a lot of the insurance companies are looking at now, is that 0 to 5 foot zone. And there's talk about having the state enforce that 0 to 5 foot zone in new construction and new development and new homes that are getting built. But also there's a talk of retroing that, right, for existing homes. I know that for us, that would be sort of a very difficult thing to try to enforce, right? I can't tell, you know, grandma to get rid of her rose bush that she's had there for 30 years right in front of her window anymore. And so that becomes a very difficult thing to enforce. And so, but for the insurance companies, they don't care. They're the ones taking the risk. They're the ones writing the policies. And so if they want to enforce that 0 to 5 foot zone, they can. And there's nothing I can do to stop it, right? They're the ones writing the policy. So just keep in mind that, and what do they mean by 0 to 5 feet? What they're looking at is that 5 feet from your house would be devoid of any vegetation or any other combustible materials, mulch or anything like that. If you have a wooden fence, you might have a wooden fence, and then if it connects with the house, maybe that 5 foot portion of the fence that connects to the house or the gate, that would, you could either switch out the entire fence system to something else other than wood, or just the gate there would be either wrought iron or something non-combustible. That's what they're looking at now. And they're grading the homes and their policies when they're looking at those things. Next, as you get into the 5 or 30 foot zone, you're sort of kind of clearing out some of the vegetation, thinning that out a little bit more, putting in a little bit more native plants, things that are non-combustible types of, or more succulent types of plant material around the property, making sure that branches and other things are not falling over the house and the trees are trimmed up. And then you get into you get into the 30 to 100 foot range. And what I'm also talking about is that we're not moonscaping the properties out here. We're just kind of thinning out the property, removing a lot of the mustard grass that you see out in these hills, right? All of that green, yellow grass, that's all mustard grass. None of that is native to California. Okay, that was all brought over here by the conquistadors to mark the trails for the missions, and now it is gone all over the place. So a couple of things that we do to combat that is obviously some of the HOAs will cut that down. We expect that to get cut away. But a lot of these hills, the native vegetation would be a lot of the sage in that chaparral system. A lot of the sage that you see on the hills out here, we don't want to get rid of that. Even though, yes, can that burn? It will burn. Does that is probably the one that does produce more of the embers, but it doesn't necessarily readily ignite. It's usually the grass that gets going, that mustard grass that's 6, 7, 8 feet tall now. That is sort of the gasoline out there, the fuel, the catalyst, and it gets everything else going. And so you want to clear a lot of that stuff out. Most of these hills, when a lot of these were developed up here, most of the sage has disappeared. And so the other problem, kind of the catch-22 is if you lay bare waste to these hills and you remove the native vegetation, then what will take its place will be the invasive species, like the mustard grass. So it's always a sort of balance that we're trying to reach there. But once again, the point I'm trying to make here is that we're not trying to devoid the landscape around here of vegetation. Does it help? Yes. But what also is helping is really that 0 to 5 foot zone and the hardening your home. And so when I talk about hardening your home, what are we talking about there? That is actually the home itself, the structure itself, having boxed-in eaves if possible, providing ember-resistant vents around the house, keeping seals around the garages and the other doors, very nice and tight fit. And so I will tell you out of my experience and seeing, and I'm sure the gentleman here that talked to you, we're not losing, like I said, we're not losing these homes to these big fires coming up to the house and burning the house down. It's mostly the ember intrusion. So let me give you kind of an example of what I'm talking about. Most of up here in the hills, is the Anaheim Hills is designated a very high fire hazard severity zone. So in the Eaton fire, that zone is mostly just up above in the foothills. If anybody's been to Altadena, you're familiar with, it's pretty an urban sort of community, right? It's not the same here, right? You obviously have the large Angeles National Forest in the foothills, but as you start going a mile or 2 miles or 3 miles into the town, you're almost reaching into Pasadena. It's a very urban type of community. Well, that zone is only along about, a mile, half a mile from the foothills is their actual high fire hazard severity zone. Everything else beyond that is not. But yet that fire reached 3 miles down into the community, all the way up to the border of Pasadena. So if you're familiar with what I'm talking about, that's quite a distance away from the actual vegetation or the hills. And so homes are being destroyed from home to home ignition, from embers flying, from other things burning, and it's not necessarily the plant or the vegetation around it. If I go from home to home, and I've gone to home, I wasn't exactly in the Eaton fire, but I was at the Palisades fire, and what I can describe to you there is you're seeing homes burnt to the ground, and you're seeing trees and vegetation and bushes, they're all intact. The only thing that is burned is the house. So people like to complain about their neighbor's trees, and it's not to say that these are not things you should worry about. We certainly do enforce trees being cleaned up or anything like that. But the biggest emphasis, where we want to start, is at the house in that 0 to 5 foot zone. But if you go from house to house to house, you can see the evidence. This is not something I'm just making up. The evidence is there. If you look at the videos, I have videos. I documented a lot of that. And let me give you another example of that. So when I was at the Palisades fire, I was up in the Malibu area, and I'd come down to the coast. I got hooked up to a hydrant, and I saw the devastation along the beach, right? You see the homes along the Pacific Ocean, right? If you've driven PCH, all those homes, a lot of those homes were destroyed. So, and this, mind you, there are homes still burning or starting to burn 24 hours later. And so what is causing these houses to burn? Well, the only thing around the house is the Pacific Ocean behind them and 40 to 50 feet of highway in front of them. So there's no fire that came up to these houses and started burning them. So it's either a structure next to it burned, or embers were intruding into the house themselves and starting to burn. So there were houses still burning or catching fire 24 hours later after the fire had already come down the mountain. And so because there's still high winds, there's still stuff, just even though there's a complete devastation, there's just still a bunch of embers carrying in the air, and or from the night before, from the day before, embers have lodged themselves somewhere in that house, somewhere in a crevice, and it's just taken, usually it might take, usually what I would say is 45 minutes to an hour later, and I've been that where I walk down a street, past a house, and then next thing I know, maybe 5-10 minutes later, I turn around and the house or something on the house or the roof's on fire, right? It happens all the time. I'm sure you can attest to that, right? And so you might turn, and I've done that many times where I turn around and the house is on, and you can't tell because the entire area is smoky. I can't tell what house is on fire, not on fire, but then you see the flames. But in this case, I was watching things starting to burn 24 hours later. Especially the ones along the coast and the beach were still burning. So that was sort of eye-catching for me. So it kind of went back to what I was saying here, when I try to preach here all the time, is that we're not losing homes to a lot of the vegetation right up against the house, even though we want you to clear a lot of that, right? That's one part of the equation. The biggest part of that equation is the house itself and that vegetation between that 0 to 5 foot zone, and that 5 to 30, and then that 30 to 100 feet. That's what's burning down the homes. So what do we do to mitigate that here in Anaheim? Well, we do have an enforcement program. We do offer also a free home assessment. Now, this is the City of Anaheim Fire Department. I'm not sure, you know, if you're all residents here in the City of Anaheim. If you're in Yorba Linda, you can talk to the Orange County Fire Authority. They have a similar program. So what we do is we offer a home assessment. It's free to the residents here. They can call us up, they call me up, and I kind of walk around their house and kind of give them a free consultation as to what are the importance of what are things they can do to mitigate a fire intruding into the house or the structure being lost. So we do offer that. We also have had some of the open spaces within the city. The city cleared, you know, if we expect the homeowner to do their 100-foot of clearance, the city has to do their 100-foot of clearance, so I work in conjunction with the Parks Department. And then also, we have done a lot to kind of, now beyond the 100 feet, we're not required to, but we were working on long-term projects to kind of thin out things where we can afford and can do so beyond that 100 feet. But that takes time. That's not something that's easy to do. For us, we have kind of some built-in parks, but it's unrealistic to expect, you know, we're gonna do an entire mountain area or area. That's just not, it's probably never gonna happen. That's just the natural state of things, and we're trying to thin out things, especially just in our parks. Other ways we do that, we've used the California Conservation Corps, the Orange County Conservation Corps to kind of help thin some of that out. But like I said, the prior 2 years, we had an unprecedented amount of rain, so everything we cleared just grew right back. And it's right back to doing it again, right? And I've got, you know, 200 some acres to do. If I've gotten like halfway through, then the rains come, it comes back again, I gotta do it all over again. So it's a constant battle to do that. So what else have we done to kind of help mitigate that? You've probably seen, well, we've used the goats. So it's real popular with the kids, you know. But the goats are there to try to eradicate a lot of the mustard grass in the hills. So they're not there to just mow the lawn every year or just to do an abatement. I get quite a bit of calls of when am I going to get the goats behind the house. It's not their purpose. Their purpose is much more long-term strategic in trying to thin out and eradicate a lot of the mustard grass. Will we get all of it? I don't know yet. But every year that we keep hitting at it, the goats have basically 3 chambers or so in their stomachs, and so they're usually, when they take that grass, they're actually pulling it out of the roots there, and then whatever they, you know, poop back into the soil is filtered by their stomachs, and so they're putting back a lot less seed back into the soil. So every year you keep doing that, it starts eradicating, but you just got to keep at it, and it's very difficult still, once again, to move the goats from one area to another, and then you've got rains, and you've got other environment, and I have a very small window of time to move all of that, because the rains may come, and they like it when it's green. So once that grass dries out, the goats don't like to eat that anymore, right? Because they've lost their nutrients. They don't have that nutrients anymore, so that they can eat, and so so it's kind of another race against time, and so it becomes very difficult to try to do. And then also just a last point here, and then I'll kind of go into a little bit about home hardening from our slide here, and then I'll just go into some Q&A. What the department does, so our fire department, the City of Anaheim Fire Department, we were considered a Class 1 fire department, and so with that, we have a lot of specialized equipment. Our water system here is top-notch, and then we have a lot of specialized equipment down on the west end to meet certain threats, and And then we have specialized equipment out here on the east end. And that specialized equipment is our wildland engines, our patrols, our water tenders, and then the types of equipment that we employ out here is very specific just for the Anaheim Hills, because this is where our wildland threat is. And so we provide a lot of that equipment here. And then, so now let me kind of get to where we at on the home part here. This works for me. I don't know if I can. Well, maybe not. I had a power presentation, but I guess we had a little technical difficulty. But let me just kind of go over some quick little things then, and then I'm going to go into some Q&A. So we talked about the zones, but I want to talk about the hardening of the home. So portions of the home that we want you to concentrate on are a lot of the roof areas. Those are the kind of vulnerable surfaces around the roofs. Obviously, as you know, back in the past, you know, we banned a lot of the wood shake shingle roofs, but now we're starting to see that, you know, a lot of the asphalt shingle roofs are probably the best, and then there's other variables out there. The tile roofs are good. We always thought that was a better option, but even those are starting to fail. As you can, the thing with the tile roofs is that you have to maintain them, right? If they start cracking and they're broken, and there's a lot of space in between them, there's a lot of opportunities for embers to intrude into those spaces. In fact, the ends of the tile roofs, your Spanish tile roofs, you've got a lot of holes and gaps. If you don't have what they call a bird stop to keep birds from building nests in there, just those simple little nests are what are causing those houses to burn. It doesn't take much to get these houses to burn. It's really a lot of that little things that are right around the house, your mulch, the things that are on the roof. The eaves, once again, we have a lot of people planting a lot of plants underneath the wood eaves, and that's where that 0 to 5 foot zone is, because a lot of, you have your roof line, your house, and then the roof line, and then you have that open wood eave there. And that's what might be catching fire from other vegetation below there. And so a lot of people like to plant their palm trees there within that 5 foot zone. The popular is the juniper or the cypress trees in there. They tend to burn quite hot, real fast, but then once they get that eave going, then all bets are off. The house is going to get lost. The vents, there are a lot of new vents out there that are ember resistant vents that help prevent a lot of these embers from intruding inside of the property, inside of the house, or into your attic spaces. You look at a lot of these videos, you can see that the houses are starting to catch fire within that attic space or areas inside of the house. It's not a wall of fire that came up to the house and burned the house down. And so other things, if you don't do that, what we also recommend is to check your vents, or try to reduce the vents. A lot of them are at 1/4. We try to have them brought down to 1/8 inch mesh screens. So that's something you can go to Home Depot and try to get a 1/8 inch mesh screen to kind of reduce that intrusion of those embers from going to the spots. This is sort of a stopgap. I think the ember resistant vents are probably better, but if you can't do that, that's another thing you can do. The walls of your house, obviously, if they're stucco versus combustible or wood-sided roofs, oh, okay. Maybe I had the wrong.
It was this one.
Oh, my bad. Okay, so we can. That's something else you can do. Let's see, balconies and decks, non-combustible materials, metal, masonry, lightweight, concrete. These are all things that are of value to your home. Once the deck gets going, obviously it's connected to your house, especially on these slopes, on these hillsides. Once that deck gets going, and then also clearing out that brush underneath the decks. Roofs, we talked about that a little bit. Your eaves, here are your soffits. These are some kind of solutions you can. When we talk about boxing in your eaves, that's the underside portion of the roof that extends from the home's outer wall to the roof's edge. There are some things out there in the market where you can kind of box those in. You can't even use wood. Surprisingly, it's not not the wood that we're really concerned about in a sense, but it's a nice flat surface where you don't get a lot of embers and you don't get a lot of rot in there. And he's in this sort of little alcove or sort of area. This is a pointer. But what it's trying to do is not prevent a lot of that heat to get trapped into that pocket of that eave in there. We talked about the vents. The biggest ones are your gable vents alongside your house. Those ones you might want to try to look at. Those are probably the biggest vents that you have in your house. If they're not there, then you might have them on your roof. You might have the larger roof vents. Patio covers. Making sure your patio covers are well maintained. You paint them, they don't have a lot of dry rot. And we try to avoid putting a lot of vines and other plant material around your patio decks and your patio covers. Windows. If your window has a single pane window, replacing them with dual pane windows helps. And there can be some energy cost savings there for you. The city of Anaheim does offer a rebate for windows and then also for adding vents, ember-resistant vents. So through our public utilities, you can get a rebate, about a 20% rebate if you install those things. The city will give you back a rebate. But that's for the city of Anaheim. Rain gutters, the other notorious things here. Making sure that debris inside your rain gutters are cleared and or putting some type of guard or mesh screen on the top of there to prevent a lot of that debris from getting inside there. The other big thing here is the garage. We do have a lot of garage ember intrusions in a lot of these houses. I did save one house. Luckily, it was detached from the house that the garage was, but you can tell where the fire had made it through. It just gets into a lot of these gaps down below, those rubber seals down below, and then the seals on the side. The house is just getting bombarded with embers like a blizzard, and so they're making their way inside, and once they get something ignited inside the garage, then there goes the garage, and if it's attached to the house, there goes the house. Fences out there, looking to try to replace your wood fences, if possible, to other types of materials, something more durable, more fire resistant, or if you're able to, if you still have a wood fence, try to at least keep, as you can see here, a lot of sitting in on the bed of mulch or any types of vegetation growing on your fence, especially vines. People like to grow vines and other types of things on their fences. But a lot of that material, we have a lot of dead material inside of it, even though it might be a live plant. Once that gets going, it will take the fence with it, and then eventually it will take the house with it as well. So I'm going to skip around here, and I'm just going to go into some questions, Q&A here. This was just something that I had a PowerPoint presentation, but we had a different sort of technical difficulty here. But other than that, I want to kind of go into this Q&A and answer anything the best I can. So I'll leave it out to anybody who has any questions. Yes.
Adrian, just wondering about City of Anaheim's requirement / restriction regarding Peralta Hills properties. Our understanding is that there is no HOA for Peralta Hills properties. They are surrounded with excessive vegetation and very overgrown trees, tall trees.
Yeah.
What type of a restriction or City of Anaheim is imposing on those properties?
Well, I have to look at it on a case-by-case basis here. And what I was trying to get back to earlier, when I kind of get back to what I want to say, is I do get a lot of things where people say things are overgrown, or things are, we have a lot of tall trees. Well, tall trees are not covered in the code. So trees can grow as tall as they want to grow. That's not what's making a tree hazardous. What makes a tree hazardous is does it have a lot of dead material in the tree, where branches or pine trees, where the pine tree is so thick that the material is not falling to the ground. You have a lot of clumps of dead pine needles or leaves inside the tree. The homeowner or the property owner has to clean that out. And then if the tree is dead, it has to be removed. And if there's portions of the tree that are dead, those have to be removed. And other things that we do ask the homeowner to do is to limb up their trees anywhere between 6 to 10 feet off the ground, or limit a lot of the vegetation underneath the tree, so that you don't get the tree to start igniting in there. So when we talk about Peralta Hills, there's no HOA. I can only go out there on a case-by-case basis, and if someone complains about on it. So obviously I don't have the power to go on everybody's property and just inspect everybody's property. So I have to take it on the case-by-case basis. There are still some empty lots in that Peralta Hills area, so those we enforce. They have to clear those lots. Those I do expect those to clear. If we're talking about hillsides, we require the 100-foot of clearance from the house. So it's not the property line; it is from the structure to the vegetation. But empty lots, like some of those in the Peralta Hills, where they're just vacant lots that haven't been built out yet, those we will require them to clear the whole thing, because it's not a park, it's not a natural area, it's something that's supposed to be maintained by the property owner at all times. So those are how we clear those things. And getting back to what I'm saying is that it's not necessarily the trees or tall trees that are burning down the houses. And it is what's burning 5 or 10 feet around the house and the structure itself that is burning down. So if I showed you a video, probably could, I don't know, maybe if I can took it up to my cell phone, can show you where there's house after house after house that is burned down, and most of all the trees are still there. And if the trees are burnt, it's not because the tree burnt the house, it's the other way around. It's the house that burned the tree. And so, I'm not to say that trees are not an issue. Trees can be an issue, and we will enforce that. But I want to make sure that we kind of coined this term in here. I know that you're looking out and you're looking at your neighbor's trees and their vegetation in here, but what I like to try to always emphasize is take a step back and just turn around and start from that 0 to 5 foot zone. If protecting your home is your highest priority, you want to start there. Not start way out up with what you see out there. It's what's at that 0 to 5 foot zone, and that's what we offer the home assessment to try to kind of do that. But I also hear what you're saying, and I don't want people to think that we just don't do those things, or we're not going to enforce those things. It is easier when you have an HOA. Some HOAs easier than others, obviously, but it is a lot easier in HOA. When you have large communities like Peralta Hills or the Moeller Loop area, you just got to do it on a house-by-house basis. We do send out notices to a lot of the property owners that lie within the high fire hazard severity zone to clear their properties, and then we try our best to try to enforce that as well. But keep in mind, it's just me. I do a lot of the enforcement out here, and so to hit all the thousands of homes out here, I would need several more people, or quite a bit of number of people to do that. But if we just keep concentrating on only doing that and not getting the message out about that 0 to 5 foot zone and the house itself, then I think we're losing the message here. It's very evident as to what's been burning around these houses. And there's gonna be a lot of things that are gonna be prevalent with that, especially when you look at the Eaton fire. Palisades is still kind of tucked in there, even though a lot of it burned into the community that's away from the hills, but it is quite intertwined with the vegetation up in the Palisades area. The Eden Fire is quite just an urban conflagration. It is just home-to-home ignitions and high winds and embers igniting from house to house. So there's no vegetation there. And then the other example, like I said, is the houses along the coast on Malibu. There's no vegetation around the houses, right? It's just the house itself that's burning. So I hope that can answer your question, but if you have any issues out in the Peralta Hills, feel free to give me a call and I will look at these properties individually. Yes, ma'am.
How important, or is it important to have a chimney cap? Because my chimney just has like a mesh over the top.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have one of those chimney caps with a little metal roof.
Well, that is required by code. Now I can't go around getting on people's roofs and inspecting that, obviously, but it is required by code. So you have to have some type of spark arrestor or some type of mesh up there in the case that you use your fireplace. The only good thing about that sort of rule is not many people use their fireplace anymore. It's getting kind of abandoned. I don't think a lot of homes are even getting built with fireplaces anymore. It's just, I think the builders are not looking at it as something to invest more money in, but it is required by code.
So the straight mesh is no longer code, now you have to have the top of it?
No, if your house was originally had that, they could still have that. But would it be better to have the box mesh? Yes, it would be better to have that, yeah. If it could fit. Yes.
I heard, a lot of the fires did start in the attics. Besides the screens, is like normal insulation burn, or is there something you could have sprayed in your attic that would make it like an ember lands on it and just won't start on fire?
There are things probably out there on the market that could do such a thing, but keep in mind that your attic, things in product begin to break down, and your attic is exposed to a lot of heat and cold throughout the day. Whatever you're going to spray in there, whatever amount of money you're going to spend to do that, will it last 5 years, 10 years, right? Or you did it once and 30 years later you have a fire comes to the community. I don't know that those are the end-all be-all to it. What you want to try to do is to get it from getting inside there at all. And so, and burning anything where it might land on some of the wood pieces. I don't know that the insulation itself is actually catching fire, but what's happening is that the embers are getting caught by the insulation and sort of creating a little nest of areas and insulating a lot of those embers. Remember, the air around is dry. Your house itself is fuel. So, we tell you, people are wetting their houses down, right? But yet but the moisture outside is dropped down to in its teens, 5% for the Palisades and Eden Fire, right? With these high winds, you can throw water on these wood structures. The water's just not going to soak in there; it's just going to dry out. And so, so what the attic space does, it sort of gets in there. The air is dry in there, and it's just creating this little net. And then you just get a buildup of embers. You may get a pile of embers. Just think of it as snow piling up in a section of your house or area if you've been out there, and that thing is just red hot, and sooner or later it's going to find something to burn. So it may not just be one ember, but an accumulation of embers. When we talked about the garage air, sometimes what you're getting too is you're just getting, wherever you see around your house, you get a lot of, when the wind's blowing, you get a pile of leaves in a certain area. That's most likely where you're going to get a pile of embers piling up as well. So that's kind of a visual cue you can kind of use to kind of see where you want to clean up around your house. Wherever those leaves are accumulating around your house, that's where the embers are going to accumulate. And then I'll get to you. Yes.
What are your thoughts on artificial turf?
We're not losing a lot of homes to just a green grass burning. Do some of the green grass burn? Yeah. We're talking about very low level fire on your actual grass. If you have artificial grass, I haven't seen a lot of artificial grass burning. And if it is, could it burn? Yeah. but is it causing homes to burn down? I haven't seen evidence of that. Maybe there's something out there, but it's not something that's prevalent. Is it better? Yeah, anything's better. Maybe that's artificial. But if you have actual green grass, very low grass, you know, when we ask you to cut your vegetation or the mustard grass out there, you know, all we're asking is it cut down below 18 inches. And so, and not any higher than 4 inches. But once it gets to 18 inches, then we want that all cut down. But the highest is, you know, no more than 4 inches off the ground. So it's not producing a lot. And then it depends on, you know, do you maintain your grass? Is the grass kind of dead or not? That was sort of more the thing in Hawaii, in Lahaina, because I don't think people are acclimated to the kind of wildfire problem like we have here. But that's also years and decades in the making in Hawaii, and that's had to do a lot with the environment and the farms and a lot of the dry area that was left from the agriculture that was abandoned and kind of went out of business there. That kind of left the area a little bit more dry than usual. But no, I haven't seen anything yet on that. The gentleman over here first.
Thank you.
Yeah.
During this recent fire event, there was a new term thrown out. I think it was something like PDS, particularly dangerous situation.
Yes.
As well as the red flag warning. And during this event, I received on my buzz multiple notifications that there were volunteers up in the hills. There were engines stationed at various places on the lookout. And we applaud that very proactive approach, because I think the key to this is early intervention. Is that now a routine? What will trigger the volunteers being in the hills, the engines being placed in certain locations? What is the trigger?
The trigger for us is anytime we have a red flag warning. So usually before a red flag, we have what they call a fire weather watch, and that might be 72 hours at most that we know that a potential red flag will be coming out, and then we have a red flag. When a red flag is declared for the area, that means that the humidity and fuel levels and or heat, whichever of the three, will combine to cause any fire in these hills to be a significance where it may get out of our initial attack activity. So initial attack is basically when we have these engines positioned out here, and within the first hour or so or minutes of a fire, can we control that fire within that crucial time frame? And the red flag warning is there that possibly we may not be able to. And so with that, when that red flag is declared in the city of Anaheim, and I cannot speak for others, but it's very similar. So what we do is we shut down the parks. So the parks are shut down. Our emergency operations center is staffed, not fully staffed, but prepared to take on staff if needs be, and it's monitoring the situation. We have our cameras that are out in the hills, and then it activates the park rangers to patrol the parks to make sure the parks are closed, that we don't have people in the parks. I tend to, and this is my own rule, I tend to get the goats out of the park if I can. And then that causes our fire watch patrol, which is our CERT members that are our volunteer CERT members that we have that will go out and patrol the hills. They're volunteers within the department, and they go out and patrol around the hills to kind of keep an eye on any nefarious activity, any smoke or fire out there. But to complement that, we have a lot of these fire cameras that are up in these hills now, and that's being monitored at our dispatch center. And what is sort of new now with the cameras, they do use an AI system to kind of point the camera. If it picks up something, it might pick it up. But this year actually was the first time Orange County Fire was able to actually pick up a fire, and the AI system actually identified a fire and was able to say, hey, this is an actual fire. We can get, it's try to dispatch units. And so that was kind of unprecedented, so that was kind of a new thing. So the AI system was able to differentiate a lot of different light that's been seen out there at night. So that was a new thing that happened this year. And then as far as our engine companies are concerned, it depends on what may be the severity of the red flag. So, but we will usually we will upstaff our engine companies. And what does that mean? So usually, let's say like station 9 or 10, they might have a single engine or 2 engines in there. So we also have the brush engines. Normally what they'll do is they'll cross-staff that engine, right? But on a red flag day, the second engine that they cross-staff will just bring in an extra crew to fully staff it 24/7 during that period. And then during these, the current high red flag danger, that PDS, as you mentioned, we were seeing that winds were going to be much more unprecedented, especially in some of the areas. Now, we didn't get a PDS always in the hills throughout that week. There were certain days that had the PDS. We decided that just to keep the full staffing on there. But even when there wasn't a PDS, even when we saw a lot of these high winds, that would be a typical strong Santa Ana wind day, right? You have 20, 35, 55 mile per hour winds. Well, the PDS are going into the 65, 80, the 100 mile per hour gusts, right? Those are hurricane force winds. And so we brought in, not only did we cross-staff that staff, then we brought in extra personnel and the other engine apparatuses. We did park a lot of our engines out here at the hotel here. We just provide our own strike team within the city. We did send equipment and personnel to help in the Palisades fire, but given that this was going to be a long duration event, the city and the chief and the Orange County fire chiefs got together and said, okay, well, we're going to give them this. They've got a lot of stuff over there already. We're going to keep a lot more stuff in-house here, and because the system isn't over yet, and so we can't just send everything and leave the city bare, and so that's kind of what happens, kind of a long-winded thing. So we do upstaff, we provide a strike team. Actually, I wouldn't call it strike team; it was more of a task force, extra engines, patrols, and the water tender to respond independently from the stations. They responded from this location, and then we're also out patrolling as well. But we kept them together as one task force. Once we heard of a fire coming out, we would try to jump on it as fast as we can with as much equipment that we can, and hope that we can get it. And I do say hope. It'd be unrealistic to say just because we have that, we will prevent that, but we want to be ready. So if we can get it, and we get enough equipment there, we will try our best to do that. Yes?
I noticed in like Camino Grande, there's some fire hydrants that have out of service. Is there an issue with any of the fire hydrants?
If there's a hydrant that's out of service, public utilities the water division of public utilities will go and address that. And the fire department does not inspect the hydrant system. So we will also call out if it's not working out there. We will tell public utilities, the water division, to make sure that it's up and running again. But most of your neighborhoods, and I kind of want to touch upon that just a bit because I'm not an expert in engineering and water engineering, but what I can tell you is that your system can mostly handle, and I say mostly, handle a lot of big fires. We're talking about a street or area, houses on fire, right? But this is not necessarily unprecedented what you saw in the Palisades or running out of water, right? Now there's all kinds of things going out there. I'm not going to get into a discussion on the particulars, but I just kind of want to point out that a lot of these systems were not designed to handle 8,000 or 10,000 homes on fire at the same time. At some point, just like the sprinkler system in this building, if there's a fire in this building, it does not mean that all the sprinklers in this building go off at the same time, like you see in the movies. That's not what happens. What happens is that there's a fire by one head and it goes off. If the fire's big enough and it gets another head, the other head will go off. These systems are only designed to put out a fire within the three or four head little radius area. Once you get a big enough fire, as you see, like at a Home Depot shopping center, you see these big fires, they have full sprinkler systems, right? If you get enough fire load, it will overrun the water, just like your water hose, or if you turn on all of your faucets, you flush your toilet, wash your house, at some point to the point where you're trying to get at, you can start to lose pressure. And as homes are being lost, now all of that water, the pipes are open, the pressure's being lost, and so you're gonna start losing pressure. So that is something that we do factor in. We have to factor it in. Is there a solution to it on a large scale like that? I don't know. But we do our best. All of the engines carry water. The city bought an extra water tender to help shuttle water if we needed to. The structure engines carry anywhere about 750 gallons in the tank themselves. And then the brush engines carry also 750, where normally they would carry 500, but we upped it to 750. So everything is carrying water. During these events, as you can see, if we had a typical structure fire, it would take about 3 or 4 engines to fight one structure fire, right? That's guys getting fully dawned, getting in there and battling a fire. When you're battling an entire neighborhood that's on fire, it's unrealistic. We're not going to have an engine at every house. If there's 8,000 houses or 7,000 houses, right? We're a department with 12 fire engines. We're not going to have that. And if there are engines, they have to come from our neighboring partnering cities, Riverside, Orange County Fire, Cal Fire, or even the Forest Service. They take time to get at a location, and you never know when a fire is going to strike. And so we can upstaff like we did with extra pieces of equipment, and so we do our best to kind of to do that. And so I don't know if I got off track here on your question here. So I'm just trying to kind of put things into perspective. Yes, ma'am. I'm sorry, I missed you a couple times.
That's okay. It's regarding the embers and the importance of the embers getting stuck in the crevices or what have you. What is the impact, if any, on solar panels? Does it attract them underneath, or?
Yeah, there's still a lot of stuff out there when it comes to solar panels. You do want to kind of clean out underneath the solar panels, right? So if you have solar panels and there's a lot of debris and leaves and things underneath those solar panels, right, and there's a buildup in there, you want to try to clean that out. You do have to clean that out. So they will trap a lot, but it depends on how they're built, where they're facing, so they're all going to be a little bit different. But yes, you should be checking around the solar panels to make sure to clean out that as well, especially underneath them. Most people do a pretty good job of it, but yeah, when you get the solar panels, they're probably going to trap a bunch of debris and leaves and stuff underneath them. So yeah, you do want to check that. Yes, I think we'll go for 2 with this, and then the other lady, I think we'll be.
Yeah, and then we have Kimberly too for any insurance questions.
Yes, sir.
Okay, I have a technical question.
Oh,
I'll go back to Anaheim Hills Fire 1 and 2 back in 2017.
Canyon 1 and 2?
Yeah, if you recall, it started by a tiny car by the freeway and then climbed up the hill. And the homes were barely 2 years old, some of them brand new houses, beautiful homes. And by chance, a local news helicopter came over and was hovering over those homes, and they filmed how embers go towards the homes and they get into the vents, usually because the side vents are covered by the mesh. They go through the end of the house, which is the open vent. And within seconds, it starts smoking through those vents. In minutes, the flames burst, 30 minutes, house is gone, nothing's left.
Right.
So my question is can fire department initiate a building code change and require retrofit all the homes so the embers could not go through those vents? I mean, because one house can do it, yes, but if your neighbor isn't doing it, How good is that?
I think that's a good question. I don't have an answer to that. And the reason why is this. So, new homes that are being built have to be built up to, in these high fire hazard severity zone areas. If the area is designated a high fire hazard severity zone, they have to be built with this new Chapter 7A building requirements. Now, if you're asking the government to impose upon existing residents a much higher standard of building construction for their existing home, this is going to run into the thousands of dollars for each homeowner. And so the question doesn't lie, will the government do it? It's whether the citizens want that and are going to vote that. If we did that, I don't know that that's going to be a popular thing. Would it be a good thing? It would be a good thing. But as you can see in the Palisades, they want to just build the Palisades exactly the way it was again. They don't want, and the president said, and the governor said, and the mayor said, yeah, we're going to cut all the red tape, and we're going to put it back together again, right? We don't want this government bureaucracy. And I get it. I get it. But there's a trade-off here. So at the end of the day, it is, if the people want that to be that, then maybe that'll happen. But if I don't know that that's going to be a popular thing for any council, state government, or federal government to try to impose upon existing residents. All I can do is just kind of point to you and tell you, if you don't do these things, this is why your home is going to burn down. And so, and that's why I try to get back to this emphasis. It's not that the trees are not important, they are important. I don't want anyone to go away and say, Adrian said the trees are not important. They are important. You do have to maintain the trees, but you also have to maintain the house, and that's where we want to start it. That's all I can say. I wish I could answer that question for you.
Yeah, just a note that after '94 earthquake, the government didn't have any problems imposing retrofit laws for the earthquake.
Yeah.
After one balcony collapsed in Malibu, they didn't have any problem imposing throughout the state balconies retrofit.
Sure. Yeah.
So how come everybody knows about those vents? There are millions of homes with those vents open. Every house with open vents is a matchbox. It's waiting for a disaster.
Yeah.
One single ember through the vent, your house is gone, and no one's doing anything.
I get it. I do. I don't have an answer for you. I don't. I wish I did.
Good, one more.
Let me get to this, ladies. I think I can talk to you after, but I don't want to cut off.
I just wanted to ask about, I heard about several people who, prior to evacuating, sprayed their homes with some sort of fire retardant spray or something.
Yeah.
What is that, and where is it available for purchase, or?
There's all kinds of things out there on the market. I'm not saying that these are bad things necessarily. Okay, I want to address this in context again. So, there is no end-all, be-all magic solution out there to the fire problem out here. It's a multitude of things. And so, these are things that sort of complement. There are gels out there, and then there's foam out there, right? So there's different variables out there. There's things you can spray your vegetation out there, right? But they all have limited sort of capabilities. They have pros and cons. You have to be home when that happens. If you spray it beforehand, like a long-term retardant they have, after a big heavy rain, you're gonna have to spray it again, right? And then there are foams out there that kind of probably do the better job of trying to soak in the water into the fuel or the house because the air is so dry. And then you have the gels. Can you spray it and you kind of leave, forget about it? Yeah, they're pretty messy and they're very hard and they have a shelf life. A lot of these things have shelf lives. So, if you have it there for 5 years, then when you want to use it, it's expired and probably degraded already. So, but those are, I would never, and let me address all, there's pool pumps out there, and those are great, fine. But don't purchase those things with the mindset, I have this, my house is safe. Your house is not safe just because you have that. Okay, your house is safe if you start with what I talked about, that 0 to 5 feet in the house, in the structure itself. These other things are just icing on the cake, right? You know, you can have those things and to complement what you're doing out there to harden your home and protect it and provide a defensible space. But please don't let it be the end-all be-all to your solutions out there. That's all I can kind of say to that. So I'm gonna I'll be available here to answer any other questions one-on-one. But let's get back to your show. I'm sorry I took too much of your time. I'm sorry. I like to talk.
Any questions about insurance, you guys? Yeah, Mike.
I keep hearing the phrase underinsured and not enough. What if you have guaranteed replacement? Well, how does that fall into the mix?
Hold on, sorry.
Can't hear you.
We lost her.
Sorry guys, I did the old school faux pas of not turning my microphone on. Okay, so guaranteed replacement cost is an old school policy. A lot of carriers don't offer it anymore. So basically what you will find, there's a handful of companies that will overinsure a property. That way it's guaranteed replacement cost. Most carriers out there are doing replacement cost value on it. So they insure the property for a specified amount, and then they offer anywhere from 10, 20, or 25% extended replacement cost coverage to kind of help fill that gap. But I think AAA is one of the only carriers that still offers guaranteed replacement cost, and it's usually in the form of adding extra coverage on the dwelling. So it's usually overinsured, so they can guarantee.
Yeah.
After you make a major renovation to your house, how soon should you be notifying your insured? Do you wait till your policy renewal, or do you need to be proactive and notify them before?
I would recommend being proactive. Here's the thing too with insurance. If you're doing renovations and you're moving out of your house for over 30 days, typically there's a separate policy you should carry, a builder's risk policy. So a lot of people will sometimes move out of their house for 6 to 8 months and keep their homeowner's insurance in force. You could run into issues with coverage in that case, but on that question, you should be calling your insurance carrier immediately when you're done with renovations, or potentially beforehand, so you can make sure you have the proper coverage during renovations.
Thank you.
Yes.
Any other?
Hi, kid, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Oh, great. I've lived here 30 years, been through a couple fires. Back in the mid-70s, when Anaheim Hills was being developed, the city council amended their municipal code and assigned all of slope maintenance to HOAs. It's mandatory. Along comes the issue of a WU in the mid-2000s, and that's the wildland urban interface, which covers all of this area. And with it come requirements for slope management, brush clearance, vegetation clearance, et cetera, what Adrian was talking about tonight. Poorly understood, and the question became, well, whose responsibility is it? It's not in anybody's CC&Rs. I've looked at several. No one stopped to amend their CC&Rs to clarify the responsibilities of the HOAs. And so what we have now is confusion. Who is responsible for this 100 feet of brush? And I happen to live in an area, I have an acre and a half of slope. And every year it's a fight. It's even resulted in litigation a couple of times. And the simple solution to me is for the fire department to get together, clarify the boundaries of who's responsible for what, and make sure everybody understands this. Now, Adrian has done all he can. He's one guy, but I'm hearing tonight that there's probably not enough money to support anything like that. He doesn't have enough help. It's overwhelming. And generally, when you confront an HOA, you're going to get nothing but pushback. Is there any chance that the insurance industry, the realtors, any other sources can help us push our city council to take some drastic action and reduce the risk of wildland fire?
Well, I think what you're seeing happen with insurance in California is exactly that. So there are a lot of carriers that completely pulled out of writing new business in California and are non-renewing a lot of policies for that very reason. They are seeing a lot of like unmaintained brush. They're seeing a lot of homes not taking the proper measures. A lot of cities don't have ordinances for older properties to have the correct events. And so I think insurance, I know farmers, we pulled out of the Palisades quite a while ago. It was too risky. So insurance companies have been battling with the Department of Insurance to either skyrocket the rates or do something about the local brush areas. It is a massive issue that isn't just impacting people in brush areas. This Palisades fire will impact everybody with homeowners insurance. And so I think you're gonna get a lot of pushback after this because of that. Like, people are more aware of it because so much of that fire is on social media. People are looking it up. They're interested in knowing what's going on with insurance. But I do think we're gonna phase into that where there needs to be some more government involvement. Otherwise, we're gonna end up in a situation where more carriers will continue to pull out of writing in California.
So each year I get a yellow card and it says, you're on a slope, you're required to maintain it. If you're not in control of it, pass this along to whoever's in control of it. It's a very peculiar situation in Anaheim Hills that I own the slope, but the HOA has the maintenance easement. Okay, that's very peculiar to this area. So I get a card and it says, well, you must maintain your slope, clear the vegetation, or we're gonna fine you $68. Now, it costs $2,000 to keep my slope clear. So that's really, that's a no-brainer. And so we need the enforcement. We need the fire department, the city, the insurance agencies to come in and say, look, you already have the laws on the book. Let's enforce them. Let's reduce the risk up here and make it safe for everybody. And that would send a message to the insurance company that we're serious about managing our risk.
Yeah, and insurance has gotten extremely hard. I don't know if you guys have run into issues with your HOA, but insurance is cracking down on HOAs. A lot of it is not just brush, but updating roofs, electrical, plumbing. Like, I have a building I insure in Long Beach, and they just keep fixing week after week after week, and it's very apparent more needs to be done. And so insurance companies are putting the pressure on HOAs. I don't think HOAs were taking it as seriously in 2024. I think they're more in the know now, and it's really hard. If your HOA insurance gets canceled or non-renewed, finding a new HOA policy is extremely difficult, especially if it doesn't have like heating, plumbing, electrical, and updated roof in the last 20 to 30 years. You're gonna really struggle to get full coverage for that HOA. So I think more HOAs are becoming knowledgeable about that, and then the issue obviously rolling into the brush stuff. But yeah, I agree with you. I think a lot of HOAs kind of sometimes are winging it with the insurance stuff, but we are seeing in Long Beach specifically, we're seeing a lot of HOAs be non-renewed.
So let me also kind of touch upon what we're talking about here. So there are existing codes that do enforce 100 feet, and that's for everybody. So the problem is sometimes in certain areas within the hills here, not everywhere, some of the older communities that were built either at the cusp or before the areas were incorporated, like in Overloop or Alta Hills, right, where there's no HOAs with the one eucalyptus over here. So those don't have HOAs at all, right? I would rather deal with an HOA actually than having to deal with each individual homeowner. But there are certain areas where you have a house and you have a fence line, and then beyond the fence line, the HOA actually owns the property. So it's actually a separate parcel, and the HOA maintains it. So there's most of the hills actually is that. Then there are HOAs that, okay, you the homeowner own another, like on your fence, you own another, let's say 50 feet or 100 feet beyond your fence, but that area is to be maintained by your HOA. Okay, you're not allowed to touch it, but it's actually still your property. It's your parcel of property. And so, if I have to enforce it, I send a notice to the homeowner. He's gonna get the bill and he's gonna get the enforcement. It's not I don't go to the HOA saying, hey, you need to clear that, because legally, who does the property belong to? It belongs to the homeowner. But then there's another sort of civil and CCNR or whatever HOA agreements you have that sort of kind of muddle that sort of who's doing what. And sometimes I have to act like the mediator between the two. And so those are a little bit more frustrating than others. But the laws are there. What can we do? We can just kind of keep working with those communities and those HOAs. Luckily, there are not that many of them. I have the other sort of effect, but yeah, those we have to do. Yeah, another thing, and I didn't mention here earlier, is that what we're trying to do to kind of help answer a lot of things. So we're putting together these Firewise communities, where we get a group of individual residents within the community, and we're setting up our first pilot one in Anaheim and hoping to get that finally certified here. It's kind of our pilot community here. But it's basically like a neighborhood watch where we have a group of citizens that have band together, and like I said, I can't educate and assess all these homes, but if I have a group of residents and individuals that want to form a small committee or board and get an extra voice to work alongside their HOA or have a much more powerful voice to the HOA, then that might be the solution. And so right now we're trying to do that with one community, the Camino Grande Loop area around behind Station 9, and it's made up of several HOAs. But I have a representative from each one of the HOA communities, and they can get together and they can kind of pool their resources together. And this is kind of one of the solutions. And then if an area is designated a Firewise community, that is supposed to also, I say supposed, it's supposed to also give you some sort of insurance break on there with other things. So this is sort of what we're developing now. The state's kind of heavy on pushing on that. And so hopefully by this month or the end of this month, I'm hoping to get our first one going, and then we can see if we can kind of multiply that and throughout other neighborhoods. And so I do ask for your patience on that. I can only get so many done, but that's also another thing that we're trying to do. So there are the laws in the books, but also trying to get that sort of common community group going and kind of help bridge that gap with the HOAs. So.
Adrian, just in his question is, who's kind of monitoring in the area, especially 92807, where the homeowners, some of them own the slope, but the HOA maintains it. I had the experience, Adrian came out and inspected, we worked on clearing.
Yeah.
But I also ended up, when we sold the home, the mortgage company saw that the HOA was to maintain it and address the clearance again. Right. So that was a new thing to see. Not only is our fire authority, our insurance, it's wonderful also that there's a third check saying, are we doing enough check and balance here on it? And one of the conditions on that home was not what the fire authority asked us to remove, what the mortgage company asked us to remove.
And so, just so you know, there is a new law that took effect 2 years ago. So, and this is in the real estate, it's called the Senate bill or Assembly Bill AB 38. So what that is that any home that is being sold that lie within these high fire hazard severity zones, they have to go through a defensible space inspection. And so That's also a thing that takes up a good portion of my time. That didn't before, but now I've got to squeeze that in. And so that is an opportunity for me to actually be invited to the property and get in there and enforce that and say, hey, HOA, homeowner, you know, as part of the sale of this house, this needs to get done. Or at least he gets it recorded, or hey, buyer beware, this needs to get done. You guys figure out how you guys want to work that out.
And Adrian, if we could, do we have any more insurance, since he's gonna be here for a couple questions? If we have any more for her, we can kind of wrap up with her online there. Yeah, Noel.
Hi Kim, it's Noel. So we're seeing a lot of people, I've done a lot of the AB 38 inspections, and for those of you who aren't realtors, as soon as you enter escrow, you'll order an NHD report, which tells you if it's in a fire zone or not. And from there, you know, you try to get insurance. Do you have any advice for people who are having a hard time securing insurance in a wildfire zone, or some of our current clients who are then getting dropped? What should their kind of next move be? Because, you know, we've talked about Bamboo as one of the carriers who is taking a lot more risk than a lot of these carriers who've pulled out, but now I'm seeing that Bamboo is not covering a lot of our higher risk areas.
Yeah, you are correct. Since the Palisades fire, we've definitely seen a pause in terms of Bamboo issuing more policies. Farmers also offers a difference in conditions policy. If you're being non-renewed because you are in what the insurance company deems a high risk property or area, or if you're purchasing a house in those areas, right now, you're probably gonna have to go the California Bureau Plan route. And there are a lot of companies doing the difference in conditions wraps. So that's the standard homeowners insurance policy, but excludes fire. Those are typically easier. It just depends on the property. Farmers has its own little things, if the roof is older and not in great condition, farmers can be pickier about that. Bamboo's really lax with the roofs, but they're a little stricter with claims. And so really as an agent, it's kind of our job to take each situation and find out what's gonna be best for the buyer. I feel like brokers right now, you used to be able just to call one person and they could shop it around, but we've actually teamed up with quite a few brokers just because it's there's stuff we can't offer right now that they can and so forth. So if you're getting a non-renewal, you just have to be proactive. If you're purchasing a property, you need to be getting insurance quotes if you're looking in the brush area before you even put an offer in on the property. That way you can get a good idea of what the insurance is gonna run and if you are comfortable with those annual payments.
Anybody else for Kimberly? Yeah. Okay.
Thank you so much for having me virtually.
Wonderful. And want to thank our first responders, Adrian and Rob. We actually have some Wood Ranch cards for them. We got one for you too, Kimberly. So, thank you so much, you guys. If you didn't get all the handouts, please see us afterwards. We'll make sure you have those. And have a great evening. Appreciate y'all.
What about the raffle, Terry?
Oh, you know, you were. Hold on, raffle time.
For the Wood Ranch, $50 gift card. You didn't write your name on it.
Oh my God, that's me.
158.
That goes to me then.
369.
That's me.
Happy birthday, Madeline.
Thank you, guys.
All right, you got some scratchers. Real quick, we got 10 of them. Pick 10 shirts.
Hey, John. Okay. Yeah.
All right, we have got Todd Collins.
I'm on it.
Mike Kelly.
Good job, guys.
We got Carla.
Charles Chin. Or Chin.
Mike Hampton.
Charles just walked out.
You did? Okay. Bruce Westbrook.
Christine Haynes.
I don't know. Rich.
I should probably get a napkin.
The agents want to give them to actual clients.
Oh,
That'd be a
Rich
great
is
idea, guys.
my guest.
Deb Coda and Rebecca.
Don't give me this thing. I know now. Now I'm hungry. What do we have?
Can I take it to go?
Can I take it to go?
My husband, like I'm the boss. I know, let's see.
Can you believe I'm canceling on them? I'm so sleepy.
You are?
I am.
It doesn't seem like
On a
it.
listing appointment.
Tonight?
It's my neighbor, yeah.
What are you
I'm
gonna
just
say, that
sleepy.
your meeting ran late? Why can't you go there tonight? Why didn't you finish? Are you gonna say your meeting ran late or something?
I told her I'm still here.
That makes sense. Yeah, that's.
Honestly.
You're like, you know what, I'm on.
Well, she texted me, she said, he's coming at 9 o'clock. I said, no. And then she said, oh, he just walked in, her husband.
You're like,
I'm trying to do it now. You know what I mean? Seriously, like I'm dying. I said 8 a.m. I'll be, it's fine.
Yo, can I come in the morning, please?
I know. You go on. There's no way this house will sell if you're dead. Okay. Okay. I'm taking this one too.
Anything either for you. Cake's ours.
Oh my God. See, Rob Lee.
My daughter would probably just pick up the broken one.
And then shoot me out.